let's get into it. As James said, I'm Josh Muirhead from Social Mark, and originally from Cambridge. So it's awesome to come back here and talk to you guys for a lot of different reasons. One is because we're all like-minded individuals in this room, which is amazing. It's a phenomenal experience when you get into a room. And I know like-minded individuals is kind of a catchphrase right now, but really what I think of it is people who have something in common. And we all have something in common in this room. We all are in the pursuit of bettering our communications and wondering what the heck this social media stuff is all about. We have that in common, if nothing else. Now, obviously we have something else in common, and a few of you in the room I have more in common with, is woo! Hey! That I'm originally from Cambridge, so it's just an honor to come back here. It's funny driving around Cambridge. Some stuff hasn't changed at all. I swear the same potholes are here that were here when I left many years ago. I don't know, maybe you guys should talk to your municipalities about that. But then there's a lot of different changes, such as this building. This building wasn't here when I left Barrie at all. It was still just farm field. Now, they were in the process of developing some stuff, but this building was not here in existence. So it's amazing to be back. And finally, it's a thrill and a pleasure because we get to share a little bit together this morning about something I hold very dear, and it's the power of storytelling. A lot of folks will come up to the front here, and I know that you've been through 6 sessions, and they'll talk to you about the tools that we use. So they'll talk to you about Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and the list can go on, and we could fill the entire session with just naming things, not even explaining what they do. That's how many tools there are. But I'm going to go that step further. I'm going to go to that part where, okay, I've signed up to this, now what? Or I've been on X for a year, now what? And that's the question that I hope to not answer for you completely today, but maybe shed a little bit more light on today. Oh, that now what? Now what can I do to engage people a little bit better? Now what can I do to spread my idea further than I have been able to? Now what can I do to inspire people? So that's why the title of this is The World is Yours in the Story, because I truly believe that if you're an effective storyteller, you can literally control the world, or at least change it, hopefully for good. If any of you are here for evil, please leave the room. Okay. At least he's being honest, people. He's like, I am here for evil, that's what I'm here for. So, storytelling, though, is an art form that is extremely powerful, but it's because it comes back to when we were children. In fact, it comes back to before we were even cognizant learners. Our parents or our grandparents would tell us stories. Tell us stories that would educate us. Even before we knew we were being educated, they were educating us. And as we grew up, those stories evolved and became more complex. But it's amazing. You go to any room, and if there's a great storyteller, everyone's hanging on his or her every word. Why is that? It's because that's what we did when we were knee-highs to grasshoppers. That's what we did at night before we went to bed. That's how we learned first. But storytelling isn't just fables, or isn't just fairy tales. And it can be quite impactful for adults. And I don't just say this because, hey, I'm trying to make a really good point. I can prove it. Think of one of the greatest speeches probably of maybe for some of us, including myself, before my generation, but probably within the last couple centuries. Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream. Probably one of the most important speeches in the last 100 years. Today, it is still one of the hardest speeches for a speaker to give, so I won't do that. And it's also been formulated for people to copy, so that they can stand up and say, I have a dream. But Martin Luther King Jr., or Dr. King, didn't stand up and say, I have an idea, even. Or I have a plan and a strategy, and these are my charts, proving that if we work together, our productivity goes up if we started working together. He didn't have charts or flip chart, or they didn't have PowerPoint back then. He said, I have a dream. that one day all men, and he meant men and women in general, will be equal. He shared his visionary story with the people at the mall in Washington, D.C. that day. And a visionary story is something that we all would love to be able to deliver. Sometimes it's hard for us. But it was so impactful that he pushed forward the civil rights movement far beyond where it had been. I have a dream. I'm telling you a story. Okay, so today we're going to examine two other storytellers who are very similar to Dr. King, but are more in the now time, so that we can relate to what they're doing and maybe take some nuggets of information from them. And maybe gain some inspiration, and of course I'm going to do it in a couple stories. So the first one we're going to look at is this guy. Now if you take nothing else from this presentation today, take this guy's name. This is Seth Godin. Who knows Seth Godin? Show of hands. That's not surprising in a room like this. Probably one of the greatest authors, 11-time best-selling author on the New York Times, and the list goes on, and we'll get to him in a second. The other one is this guy. Now, who knows this guy? Now, this is Old Spice. Now, in 2010, and I thought I was looking at the list just before we go on. I was looking at the list. I noticed, a lot of female names. And so if I am going to win over the crowd, it never hurts to put this kind of guy up on stage, right? It's like, oh, okay, he's got to represent it. Doesn't even matter what I say from this point on. So, Old Spice, though, in 2010, was deemed to be a success, to be the top social media campaign. And I'll let you know how they were so successful in telling stories. But let's go back to Mr. Seth Godin. So Seth Godin, like I said already, is a brilliant storyteller. He tells stories extremely well. Now, his stories are more like Dr. King's versus Disney. He teaches people, he inspires people, and he leads people. His latest book, which is Poke the Box, that's the cover of it, or actually that's the start now, which is a workbook, is kind of a follow-up to most likely where most of us have read. A lot of people were introduced to Seth and have taken great inspiration from, which was Linchpin, which was a story about becoming not just another cog in the wheels, but becoming a linchpin, someone who is irreplaceable. But Seth doesn't just write great books. He shares stories online every single day. He has a daily blog. And he does some things on that blog that I hope you take away as nuggets today to think about when you're online sharing your stories to do. One of his first things that he does is, bless you by the way, whoever's sneezing, is he's brief, he's brilliant, and then he's gone. He doesn't ramble on and on and on. In fact, most of his daily posts are no more than 2 or 3 sentences, sometimes shorter. He's brief. For most of us, we don't have 3 hours to read a single blog post. For most of us, we don't have 3 minutes to read a single blog post before we want to move on to the next thing. Statistically, we actually only spend about 8 seconds per site. So he's brief. Now, in that moment of briefness, he's brilliant. Now, brilliant is a big word, and we build it up on this high plateau of, I'm not brilliant, I'm just Josh. But to be brilliant means that you're impacting someone's life, even for a second. You maybe change their point of view, or get them to think differently. That's being brilliant. It's not to come up with how to go to the moon in your car. Although if you figure that out, good on you, and you might want to patent that idea. So to be brilliant just means that you're impacting someone's life and you just getting them, even for a split moment in time, to see something differently. And that's what Seth does increasingly well when he's telling his stories. So he's brief and he's brilliant. And now, when he's gone, it means that he doesn't ramble on. A lot of us, including myself, and I get 25 minutes, so I am going to ramble on, like to just go on and on, making sure, okay, I've proven my point, but now I'm